Here from PickDogs.com, here with your college football preview show. Normally I have Steve Monahan with me, but don't know where he is, so going to just go without him. So hopefully you guys are off to a nice start to your day. We've got tons of college football action this week, and we'll be going over a lot of it. So excited to do that as always, but. Of course, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up. We're going to cover a lot of ground here, so probably get moving really, really quickly. Like I said, normally Steve Monahan with me, but I don't know, he's MIA. It's not like called and let me know what was going on, so I have no idea. Maybe he doesn't want to be a pick dog anymore. I have no idea, but regardless, I'm here. I'm going to do my picks, and we will carry on with the show. Of course, we have free picks on every game, every day at PickDogs.com. And, of course, our best bets are PickDogs Premium. We have a great Facebook group for those of you that haven't joined and haven't had a chance to check it out. It's awesome. Lots of good discussion every day in the Facebook group. But all right, let's get rolling with college football. And tonight's action, got Northern Illinois taking on Toledo. Kind of leaning to Northern Illinois. I just think that this line to me looks funny. Toledo 6-3, 5-0 at home, 4-1 against the spread. Meanwhile, Northern Illinois just 1-5 on the road this season, 3-3 against the spread on the road. 3-6 straight up on the season. Just looks odd to me. But I'm going to go with Northern Illinois in this one. This is our college football show, so we're just going over college football in this one. We did NBA and other basketball picks this morning. Normally I have Steve Monahan with me. Not sure what his deal is. But go to game between North Carolina and Pitt. That one is tomorrow night, and Pitt favored by 4. A little bit of inverse line movement here. Pitt 6-3. They're both eligible at this point, while North Carolina 4-5 so far this season. They need some wins if they want to go to a bowl game. We've seen highs and lows from both these teams this season. Pitt has now won 5 of their last 6 games. The one loss coming at home to Miami. That was their last home game that they had. Meanwhile, for North Carolina, they've lost 2 of their last 3, losing at Virginia by a touchdown last week, or last time out. It wasn't last week. It was 2 weeks ago. And last win was at Duke back on October 26th. Overtime loss at Virginia Tech. They've been in a lot of close games this season, and that's probably why the line is where it is. I think we see some scoring in this game. I'll take the over 50.5 in Pitt UNC. We'll keep moving right along, though. We're just going to cover this week's college football schedule. Just kind of go through it. I've done a lot of free pick videos already, and those are on the site. Move on to Saturday, where Texas Tech is taking on TCU. Texas Tech was favored by a point. Now they are 3-point dogs. Got some inverse line movement going in this one, despite the Red Raiders being 3-0 against the number at home this season. I'm going to go with TCU and the Horned Frogs and lay the 3 points. We'll keep it rolling. We'll go to Oklahoma State, and they're taking on Kansas. Oklahoma State is 17.5-point favorites. This just seems to be a very big number. Maybe it's a sucker line. The line opened at 17. It's now 17.5. 37% of the public on Kansas. Maybe they all have more faith in Oklahoma State than I do. I'm going to take Kansas plus the 17.5. Temple taking on Tulane. Temple 6-point underdogs in this game. Tulane 7-2 against the spread this season, but 6-point road favorites here at Temple. I don't know. Temple's a team that's kind of fed on the emotion at home. They've played well at home, and I don't know, 6-point home dogs. It looks very, very fishy to me. But I'm going to take Temple in this one. And that'll be my pick in the Temple-Tulane game. Once again, if you're just joining us, this is our college football show. We just kind of do college football. You just go through the schedule. Normally I have Steve Monahan with me. Kind of bounce things off of. Go to Nebraska, where the Huskers are taking on Wisconsin. Nebraska getting 14.5 points in this thing. To me, that just seems like too many points. I've seen that Wisconsin offense struggle too often. This line has really moved up. It was at 12. It's now 14.5. When I did the video this week, it was 13. So this has really been a mover, but I'll take Nebraska plus 2 touchdowns and change at home. Go to Penn State taking on Indiana. Indiana, one of the surprises this year in the Big Ten, 7-2, but tougher competition leads to tough spots. I'm going to take Penn State in this one. I think they bounced back from last week. I think we've seen Penn State. It made me a little nervous when they took their foot off the gas against Michigan, but they were unable to turn it back on last week against Minnesota. They had a chance in that game, but couldn't get it done. Meanwhile, Florida goes to Missouri. Missouri 5-0 at home, 4-1 against the spread. Florida's played a really tough schedule, 8-2 this season for the Gators, 2-1 on the road, 2-1 against the spread on the road. I'll lay the touchdown with Florida. Go to Mississippi State in Stark Vegas as the Mississippi State Bulldogs take on Alabama. Alabama, of course, on the outside looking in at the playoffs. And at this point, I have to say that Alabama is going to roll them. The line went from 19.5 in this one to 17.5. It is a significant line movement to the downside, but I think the Tide are just way too much. I think Mississippi State's going to be way up for this game. It isn't going to matter. I'm going to take Alabama and lay the number. Maybe it goes down to 17. We've got Michigan taking on Michigan State. Originally on the video, I gave out the over in this game, but I actually think that this one's going to go under. I think that the more I look at it, the more that it's going to be more of a deliberate pace. Points are going to be tough to come by. And these two teams, of course, they don't like each other, and that always keeps things moving. I'm going to take the under in Michigan State. Notre Dame taking on Navy. This line's gone from 10 to 7, but I think what we really see in this game is a ton of points. I like the over in Notre Dame Navy. I think both these teams move the ball. Those of you joining us late, this is our college football show. I'm live weekdays 4 p.m. On Wednesdays, we do college football. Thursdays at 4 p.m., NFL football. And Fridays, it's football free-for-all, where any football questions you guys ask is fair game. Like I said, normally Steve Monahan with me. Today, MIA. There's no MIA in Monahan. Clemson taking on Wake Forest. This line has been kind of all over the place, but right now it's up to 34.5 points. Wake, not very good on the road. Now it's back-to-back road games after losing it straight up at Virginia Tech last week. 56% of the public on Wake Forest, but the 34.5-point dogs. I like Wake also. I'm going to take Wake plus the 34.5. I don't think this is going to make my premium pick list. Meanwhile, Iowa State taking on Texas. Iowa State's 7-point favorites over Texas in this game. Once again, I think this is a high-scoring game. I like over in Iowa State, Texas. But those of you joining us, of course, this is our college football program, college football rundown. I kind of just run through the college football picks and see what's out there. Normally, I'm joined by Steve Monahan, but Steve is missing today, so it's just me. Kind of wasn't really prepared for this, but we'll see what happens. We'll keep rolling with it. But anyways, Get to our next game. Hit something wrong here and I lost my screen. That's why I got the delay going. But let's see. Did Iowa State, Texas, West Virginia up against Kansas State. Kansas State only 14-point favorites in this one. You know, West Virginia has been pretty stingy against teams like Baylor, but I think they're in a rough spot here. I think Kansas State blows them out. I think this is one of the stronger plays of the week. And if you're a premium member, you're probably going to see this one once again. Meanwhile, Vandy takes on Kentucky. Kentucky 4-5 on the season, but 10.5-point favorites against Vandy, who's really having a rough year. 2-7, 1-8 against the spread this season. I look for the Wildcats to bounce back after last week's really rough second half against Tennessee. You got Virginia Tech against Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech 6-3 this season. Man, the Hokies kind of really came back. They get that win over Notre Dame. They're 7-3. It's like they certainly don't look like that type of team, but that is what they've rated out to be. So I'll take Virginia Tech here over Georgia Tech. Our next game, we go to Auburn, who takes on Georgia. And Georgia, 7-point favorites in this one, moving into the number 4 spot in the playoff. But I don't think the Bulldogs get it done here. I like Auburn all the way at home. Auburn's got 2 losses already this season. I don't think they get a third here. I think Georgia gets knocked out, and then we have to hear it about Alabama again. Yuck. Meanwhile, Rutgers taking on Ohio State. Ohio State laying 52.5 points. I think this is a ton of points. I know Ohio State's toughest part of their schedule is coming up, but I still am going to take them. I just don't see how Rutgers moves the ball on them. There's no way I'm going to bet that game. This is like the old Nebraska spreads. We got Duke taking on Syracuse. Duke 10.5-point favorites. Syracuse, one more loss, and they're out of the bowl picture. Duke, a win, they're only one game away from being bowl eligible. I'm going to go with Duke here. They're just the better team. Syracuse has been terrible this season. We got Iowa against Minnesota. The Hawkeyes laying 3 points. Minnesota coming off of that huge win against Penn State. I think that Iowa creates some big problems here for Minnesota, especially being on the road. Minnesota's 6-2 against the number. Iowa just 2-3 against the spread at home. I think this game is going to go under in the Iowa-Minnesota game. I think that you have two teams that take forever to snap the ball. I think what you have here is limited plays. So when you have limited plays, you have limited scoring. So we'll take the under in Iowa-Minnesota. Washington State taking on Stanford. Two teams kind of need this one to get to the bowls. The loser will need to win out, while the winner will be one game away from being bowl eligible. Washington State was super disappointing last week, and so was Stanford. I think Washington State at home, I don't love this one. Got Cincinnati taking on South Florida. Bearcats just really tough this season. Just the one loss to Ohio State. Coming off of that monster win last week, they won by about 100 points against UConn. I'm going to take Cincinnati again this week. LSU taking on Ole Miss. Generally, you look for LSU like after the Alabama week to be in a letdown type spot, but I don't expect to see any letdown here. I like LSU by 3 touchdowns. I just think that they're a really good team. I don't know if they're going to win the national championship, but I definitely think that they deserve to be in the spot that they're in. I think in the playoff picture, I don't think they deserve to be number one. I still think Clemson is number one. They're the defending champions, and no one has beat them. Meanwhile, Oregon State against... Hello.
Hey.
We're live here on the show.
Hey guys, how are you? Sometimes the day job gets involved here, and these damn kids.
Well, we've gone through most of the schedule here. We're pretty much at the late games at this point.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's where we're at. But, Steve, congrats on the Super Bowl win and the Oakland Braves bringing home the title. Overtime.
Yep. Thank you very much. It was exciting, and I'm so happy for our kids. And we went down 6-0, 6-6. We tied it. We went down 12-6, tied it 12-12. Obviously, extra points are not kicked in youth football, and we won in overtime. We deferred. We let Garfield get the ball first, and so we would know. We got to go for one or two. Stuffed them on the 1 yard line. We got the ball, and we shoved it right down their throats, and we won the championship. Couldn't be happier for the parents, for the kids. It's not about me, although my son is on the team. Really, I got such a thrill.
So they went for it on fourth down. The other Garfield went for it on fourth down and didn't get it.
Yeah. They were on the 2 yard line, and we stuffed them.
How's the kicking game at that age level?
There is no kicking game at that. That's my point. That's why you either go for one or two. One is from the 2 yard line.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. No goalpost at this age.
Oh. Okay.
Right? So no Fuad Reve or Scott Norwood or, that type of
That's
thing.
a factor.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
So the bigger question: did they try the halfback option pass? And was he wearing the glove?
You know what? It wasn't cold enough where he had to take a glove off here and there. It was about 38 degrees or so. So the answer to your question is no. They never threw it. They never did. Although one kid on Garfield punched one of our kids in the first quarter, got thrown out. And then
emotions run high in championship.
Yeah, but when we went to the league, it's the third ejection throughout the year. So
well, I gave out my picks in a bunch of games. We'll just recap these, and we'll get some quick hitters from you, and then we'll recap at the end. Just tell us who you like. Northern Illinois, Toledo. Northern Illinois getting 2.5.
I like Toledo.
All right. Then we got Pitt against North Carolina.
North Carolina.
UNC +4. Then we had TCU, Texas Tech. The line's 3 in that game. TCU's favored.
Yeah, TCU.
What did you say? I missed it.
TCU.
All right. Kansas,
the Horned Frogs.
Oklahoma State -17.5 versus Kansas.
Oklahoma State.
It's a lot of points.
It is.
Tulane -6 at Temple.
I'll take the Temple Owls.
Got Nebraska +14.5 hosting Wisconsin.
Ooh, I'll take the Badgers here.
Got Penn State hosting Indiana. Penn State -14.5 in this one.
Penn State all the way. Angry after their loss to Minnesota.
I took Penn State in my pick, but it's like I'm less than convinced. I thought coaches who take their foot off the gas, like we saw in the Michigan game with Penn State, it never is a good thing. But you're up against the coach that quits on
You're right. Time. You're right.
We got Missouri. We got Missouri hosting Florida. Missouri +7. Undefeated.
Oh, I like the Gators all the way there.
Yep, Missouri undefeated at home this season.
I don't care. They're playing a good team.
Mississippi State +17.5 against Alabama.
I'll take Alabama here.
And Michigan State, Michigan. at
I like,
Michigan?
I like the Wolverines. Michigan State is turmoil.
Notre Dame Navy. Notre Dame favored by 7. It was 10.
Oh God, yeah, it's a tough one. You know, I'm a Notre Dame guy. The Navy is what, 7-1 going into this game?
7-1, 2-1 on the road, 6-2 against the number overall.
I'll take the cadets here.
Notre Dame 5-0 at home.
Take the midshipmen here.
I think this game is not in South Bend. I don't know.
I don't know off the top of my head, but normally it would be at South Bend,
Yeah, but I think
especially if Notre Dame is home.
maybe it's not this year. Maybe that's... I'll have to look into it. Someone else probably knows. We have a pretty knowledgeable audience. Yep, it is. It's in South Bend. Notre
Okay.
Dame's 16th ranked somehow. Wake Forest plus 34.5 at Clemson.
Ooh, you know what? This is actually an interesting game. Wake Forest has played well all year. However, they disappointed us last week. I think Clemson's got too much to play for. They're going to be one of the top 4 teams in the playoff. That being said, that's a lot of points. I think Wake Forest. I'll take Wake Forest here. I think Wake Forest.
I think this is one of the tougher games on the board because Clemson usually are slow starters to the season and normally really hard finishers, and that's what they have going on this season. The same thing that we've seen from them where it's kind of like they lull you to sleep the first half of the season, just win games, and then the second half of the season, it's like you can't even score a point on these guys, and
Right.
that's what they're looking like right now. I think Clemson's easily the number 1 team in the nation right now. It's not even close. They're gonna no matter who they play in the playoff, we're gonna be getting points. Just like Clemson, Clemson is the only team in the history of the college football playoffs, right? They've never been favored in one game. They've won 2 national championships. They've never been favored in a game.
Well, I don't think they want to be favored anytime soon. Then.
They were underdogs against Ohio State. They shut them out. They were underdogs against Alabama all 3 times. They beat them. They beat them 2, lost 1. They were underdogs to. They were underdogs to Oklahoma.
Alabama.
They were underdogs to. I mean, they have been underdogs every single playoff game they have been in, which is unbelievable.
That being said, I'll take Clemson.
Yeah, they've only lost 2 playoff games ever.
You're right.
And
I'll take Clemson here because they got a lot to play for.
Both times they lost to Alabama. They lost the Deshaun Watson game in the championship game, which was the onside kick game. They lost that game, and then they lost Kelly Bryant 2 years ago in the opening round of the playoffs when Saban had a month to coach them up. So those are the only 2 playoff losses that Clemson has, and they've never been favored in a game. It's unbelievable. It's just mind-boggling.
That is crazy.
It has paid for more new additions to my home, and I just can't even. It's like there are gravy trains and there are gravy trains, but it's like Clemson plus 5 against Ohio State. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like.
So your garage door opener has a Clemson Tiger sticker on it?
Well, this is what happened. What it is. This is what it is that Ohio State plays in a lot of those ABC. They used to play on those ABC games, right? Now they're on Fox, but they used to play in a lot of those ABC games.
Right.
The ACC network is new, so there was no ACC network before. So the ACC teams were kind of cast off to the 600s, on DirecTV. They were in the channel 635. It was like the 600 games, and meanwhile, Kirk Herbstreit went to Ohio State and talking Ohio State, to Urban.
Next quarterback at Ohio State, Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah, first name basis with all these guys. I mean, you look at the booth, Joey Galloway, right? Another Ohio State guy, Charles Woodson, Michigan. It's like, I mean, they're all Big Ten guys in the booth. And it's like, there's not one ACC guy there. And meanwhile, Clemson, they don't care. They don't give a crap.
No, you're right. I'm gonna go Clemson here. I think you convinced me.
Iowa State -7 versus Texas.
Yeah, I'll go Iowa State. I was big on Texas early in the season, but Iowa State, even in Iowa State's losses, they've been very competitive. Coach Campbell, I think I'll take Iowa State.
Kansas State -14 versus West Virginia.
I'll go with Kansas State Wildcats here.
I really like KSU a lot in that game. Reminds me of this matchup. Reminds me of a few years ago. One of my all-time favorite betting guys, Colin Klein, in his 73-year career at Kansas State. It's like it was one of those quarterbacks that it was kind of like he wasn't fast.
That's a good name you brought up, Colin Klein.
He wasn't too fast. He never really did anything
Good
fancy.
career.
No one could stop him. It was like you knew exactly what he was going to do, and it's like he rushed for like 200 yards a game. It's like It's like watching. It'd be the same thing as Tom Brady rushing for 225. It'd be exactly the same thing.
No, that's a great reference, Colin Klein.
Oh, Colin Klein was Colin Klein. Colin Klein paid for the Rolex. We got Vandy taking on Kentucky here. Vandy plus 10.5 at home.
I'll go Kentucky. I think Vandy stinks. Vandy got smoked last week.
And then we got Georgia Tech hosting Virginia Tech in a battle of techs. Georgia Tech plus 5.5.
I'll take Virginia Tech. You know my feelings on Georgia Tech this year.
Justin Fuente has the team playing a little better. Now we go to Auburn versus Georgia. This is an interesting game. Auburn plus 7 at home up against Georgia 8-1.
I'll take Georgia here all the way.
Love Auburn in this game. I love them.
No, I'll take Georgia.
Oh God, I love Auburn money line.
Good. I'll take.
Let's look at Auburn. Let's look at this game. Okay, this is the game.
I know they played a hard schedule.
But both their losses are on the road.
Fine.
So Georgia, their loss was at home. They're ranked number 4 in the playoff, right? The eye test, the bullshit.
Get Gus Malzahn.
How is Georgia's 8-1? Explain to me this. Somebody explain this to me. How Georgia's 8-1 with their one loss coming at home against South Carolina, who lost to Tennessee at Knoxville, right? Same team, right? Same team that they lost to, right? South Carolina, who lost to App State this week at home. Yep. Okay? Yep. How is that 8-1 better than Oregon's 8-1 when their one loss is to Auburn on a neutral site to open the season by 2 points in a very competitive game? Georgia was stomped by South Carolina at home.
They're not better, but I think Georgia is a good enough football team that can go in and win. If they don't win, at least they cover.
Let's look at Georgia's resume here for this number 4 playoff spot. Over I could care less about Alabama at the 5. To me, it's about Oregon and Utah on the outside looking in, as well as Baylor and Minnesota. I mean, how is Georgia there? Let's look. Where's the quality win? I'm missing the quality win here. Okay, so they beat Vandy in the opener, right? 30-6 at Vandy. Wow, the big SEC road win, right? Then they play Murray State. I shit you not. Okay, they play Murray State at home.
The Ja Morants. Okay.
It's like between the hedges. It's like you've been selected to play against the Masters in the rugby game after school. It's like, I mean, like at least Georgia fans, and I know college football fan bases, the Georgia fan base, at least they're realistic and they say, oh man, we got Murray State on the schedule. It's not like Alabama where they act like they've done something. If they
know Murray State's on the schedule, I got it. Number 2.
They play Arkansas State, Okay, a bad Arkansas State team at home. Then
Correct.
they host Notre Dame, who we saw at Michigan, right? We saw Notre Dame at Michigan.
It's not a
23-17, it was a bloodbath, right? It was like a Pier 6 brawl, right? Barely held on to win. They go to Knoxville, they beat Tennessee, they lose at home to South Carolina in a game. They were 20.5-point favorites and led zero part of that entire game. They were never in it, okay? So we give them credit to bounce back from that. They beat Kentucky, they beat Florida, right? And then they beat, who lost to LSU also, and then they beat Missouri at home, and Missouri hasn't won a road game all season, right? So how is that resume make you the number 4 team in the country? I don't get it.
I never touted them as the number 4 team in the country. Your question was, are they going to cover versus Auburn? I think Georgia goes to Auburn. If they lose, they're going to lose by less than 7.
No, they're favored by 7 on the road.
Okay, well then I think they're going to win by 7 on the road.
Get crushed.
I don't think so.
If you think that South Carolina pass rush was tough against Georgia, wait till you see this. And if you look at Auburn's schedule, you want to see his schedule.
That's a tough schedule.
They played Oregon in the opener, 27-21 against the probable Heisman winner, right? Hold them to 21 points. Tulane.
Is that Joe Burrow you're talking about? My boy Joe Burrow?
I'm talking about Auburn.
I know. Heisman Trophy this year will be Joe Burrow.
There's no way.
Yeah. Really? Who's it going to be?
Herbert. It's way better.
Who?
Justin Herbert.
Okay, but he's not going to win the Heisman Trophy.
Oh, my God.
He will be drafted before Joe Burrow.
Because it's decided by ESPN and not by what happens on the field then. Because he's certainly not the best player in the country.
Who has eyes and ears and everything else. Joe Burrow is deserving of the Heisman Trophy.
Oh, my God. You watch too much ESPN.
Oh, shit. Come on.
Too much ESPN.
Oh.
Yes.
What, 78% completion percentage over the years? Not good?
So Auburn has this part of their schedule. At Florida, at Arkansas, at LSU, and it's like, I don't know, man. I don't understand. I don't understand.
I think Georgia goes into Auburn and takes care of business and reestablishes themselves.
I'm
not saying they're a top 4 team. I'm not saying that at all. But I think they're talented enough to go into Auburn.
They're going to get run.
Like 10 points.
Going to get run.
You got it. We'll see what happens.
Rutgers versus Ohio State, 52.5.
Let me see. Who do I like here? You can give me Ohio State every day of the week against Rutgers. I thought it would be 55, actually, so I'll take it.
Bobby's saying I give it to Burrow based on the Alabama game, but what do I know? When's the last time you saw Herbert? When's the last time you saw him? We saw him on TV a couple weeks ago. He could have thrown 100 touchdown passes in that game against USC. He could have thrown 100 if he wanted.
You know, and I know Joe Burrow's winning the Heisman Trophy right now.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right.
This is why the Heisman Trophy is a farce.
Don't discount Joe Burrow. Kid's had a great year.
He's had a great year, but this is why the Heisman Trophy is a farce.
I'm not saying it's not, but I'm telling you who's going to win it. It's going to be Joe Burrow.
I don't think so.
Oh, I do.
Well, maybe he does, but it's not.
But back to Rutgers, Ohio State. I was laughing with a couple of the parents on my coach's team. Because a friend of the show is Nunzio Campanelli, who's the interim Rutgers head coach. And I saw him actually a couple nights ago. He's watching film of Ohio State, and this is like prior to Chase Young being suspended. Doesn't matter. He flat out said to me, he said, I don't see a flaw in this team at all, period. Now, Ohio State's going to Rutgers. So for our betting fans, I am telling you, there's no such thing as a lock, but I will tell you this. 52 points, Ohio State, they're going to lay 70 on Rutgers. You watch.
They got a tough schedule coming up. It'll be interesting to see who's playing after halftime in that game. Got Duke hosting Syracuse. Duke minus 10.5 points.
I'll take the Dukies.
All right, so we got a question here. Ryan K. It's like Ryan K says, you made a comment a while back about the playoffs in college football never becoming a bigger tournament, more teams because of Texas. Can you explain what you meant? It seems dollars would flow. Yeah, it seems that dollars would flow, but unfortunately what would happen, I don't mean that it will never become a bigger tournament. Eventually it will, because there'll be more people with more money pushing for it. But the reason why I say it's teams like Texas, why it won't happen, is because when you get to a college football playoff, there's no longer guaranteed spots in that playoff. And so there's more money for the college football as a whole, but the more money for college football as a whole doesn't necessarily mean more money for Texas. It only means more money for Texas if they can get further along in the playoff. And this way,
Right.
If they play in the Cotton Bowl, they get all that money. I'm sure they have a great split worked out with their conference.
You better believe it.
I'm sure it's a very one-sided deal, and let's just say the side is Texas.
That's some J.R. Ewing shit there going on there.
Got Iowa taking on Minnesota. Iowa minus 3 at home in this one. 34% of the public on the Hawkeyes.
I tell you, Minnesota coming off a big win against Penn State. Do they trip up? They got Iowa, then they have Northwestern, and then they finish out with Wisconsin. They look pretty good against Penn State, I got to say.
For the Axe.
Yeah, that is for the Axe. I think Minnesota wins here, and I think they're going to trip up against Wisconsin.
I took the under in this one. Stanford versus Washington State. Stanford favored by 10.5.
I'll take Washington State. Stanford's been way inconsistent.
Washington State hasn't been so good either.
I know, but Stanford, and then the points will take the Cougars.
Cincinnati minus 14 versus at South Florida.
I like the Bearcats. I think Luke Fickell's done a great job there. I'll take the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Let's see.
What do you like?
I'm going to take, I already took Cincinnati. Got LSU against Ole Miss. This is the last one of the ones that I picked already.
Okay.
LSU minus 21 at Ole Miss.
Listen, LSU is probably ranked number 1 now. I think consensus. I don't see them stopping. I think LSU.
I think they're number 1, but I don't think they're consensus number 1.
They cannot. You know what I mean. But I think all college.
I think Clemson is number
fans,
1. I think I still say Clemson is the number 1.
I am not. Listen, I'm with you. I'm just saying in general, they're probably conceived number 1 because of the Alabama victory. That being said, I am not discounting Clemson at all.
I'm not saying LSU hasn't deserved their spot. They're in the playoff and all that kind of good stuff. And I think that even
as we broadcast right now, I think they're consensus, in the general public.
I honestly think if LSU loses the championship game, I think they're still in. I think if they with 1 loss, I think they're still in with the wins over Auburn, Florida, Alabama. I think they're still in.
Exactly, I agree.
How Alabama is 5.
But to your point, I like LSU covering 21 points. You?
Yeah, I took LSU as well. This was the last one they picked on my own. So now we're back to normal. Oregon State plus 3 against Arizona State.
I'll take the Herm Edwards here.
I'll go with Oregon State. I've been riding them plenty this season.
The Beavers. Okay.
You
play to win the game.
North Carolina State, interesting team. They are plus 4 at home against Louisville. That's funny. I saw a sign. See, I always call it Louisville, but I know that there's some people that call it Louisville, and then there's Louisville. There's Louisville. There's there's all these different pronunciations of it. I saw a sign that had them all. I'm Louisville. I used to live in Cincinnati. It was it was close to. Basically, I lived in Kentucky for a while too, and we always called it Louisville. I now hear all these other pronunciations I didn't know, which I didn't even know.
Hey, listen, my pronunciation for the record is Louisville, and I know that from Denny Crum, 1980, Dr. Duncanstein, Darrell Griffith, and company with Scooter McRae and all that when they won the national championship. I'm a Louisville guy. That's how I pronounce it.
Yeah, LSU is not a unanimous number one though.
Okay, but I think the general public considers them.
54 first place votes. Ohio State has 5. Clemson has 3. If I had a vote, Clemson would have 4. But the votes are very close. 1, 2, and 3. It's splitting hairs there at the top.
It is. All right, for the record, but my point is being the general consensus is LSU is the number one team.
Yeah, because they're the ESPN team of the week. Last week it was Ohio State.
Oh, I got it. I know.
This Alabama-Georgia thing is the thing that doesn't sit well with
me. I can't discount that. I get what you're saying.
I don't get it. Alabama's played one tough game all season.
I know. There's people that believe that Alabama still has a shot to make the top 4. I'm like, what are you kidding? With that schedule, forget about it.
No,
not happening. I know they've done it before.
The last time Alabama was in the same position where they had lost the game, they didn't play in the championship game, and they got to the playoff. Ohio State beat them by about 50 points. Ezekiel Elliott scored. He's that contract that he just signed. It's still because of that same game against Alabama. It's like he's still cashing on it.
Alabama's not making the top 4 this year. They're just not going to do it.
Who has Clemson beat? Every team they've played for the last 2 years and change. That's who they beat. Every single team they've played, including Alabama.
Right, or Ohio State, they crushed 2 years ago.
Last year's Alabama LSU game, I remind you, okay, not as close as the LSU Alabama game. Not even Alabama didn't dress it up. They didn't, do anything. It was a savage. It looked like the first half of Alabama LSU, and then the second half looked like the first half again. It was a savage beatdown.
Clemson loves
they've beaten everybody that they've played. Clemson has beaten everybody that they've played. They've lost.
Clemson loves the fact
we're getting questions here. They've lost 2 playoff games ever. It's like they've beaten everybody they've played. They've won 2 of the last 3 national championships.
My point being is they love the fact nobody's talking about them. Go ahead, LSU number 1 and Ohio State, and keep talking and talking and talking. To your point, all they do is win.
Yep, and if the playoff was today, it would be LSU versus Georgia, and it would be Ohio State versus Clemson, and I would take the winner of the Ohio State-Clemson game to win it, because it'd be Clemson. I would take them to win it all again. I would take Clemson again.
I would too.
It's like no reason to believe. I mean, they'll sneak Hunter Renfrow onto the field somehow.
Oakland will give them a release for 48 hours to come back.
Hunter Renfrow is one of the, in college football, it's rare to have players that have more than 1 ring these days.
That's true.
It's rare.
He played for what, 13 years at Clemson, right?
2 rings.
Right.
How many Alabama players have 2 rings? Like I've said before that game against LSU, and like I said at the beginning of the season, and like I say every single year on all this stuff, Nick Saban's run the table one time in his entire coaching career. Yet they treat him like, he walks on water. He's run the table one time. The same amount of times that Larry Coker ran the table.
Yeah, but I'm not discounting Nick Saban.
He has no winning streaks that he
ran the table once.
To all-timers.
He's got 6 national championships, so.
Yeah. It'd be
spin it any way you want.
it'll be interesting to read the book in about 20 years, like Mike Fiers talking about what's going on in the Houston bullpen, right?
Stealing signs and stuff.
I haven't seen news like this coming out of the bullpen since David Cohn was on the Mets.
Yeah. Or Jim Bouton in the Yankees, ball four, like giving away clubhouse secrets. That was like the, forebearer of everything, and that's like late '60s we're talking about.
I think
so
David Cohn
stays in the clubhouse. Should stay in the clubhouse.
Yeah, David Cohn.
I don't care
what was traded for exposing himself in the bullpen.
Yeah.
We got 2 words for you: Kansas City. How's that sound?
I tell you, you and I went to school in Boston. When we used to go to the bleachers, Terry Forster was the reliever on the California Angels, and David Letterman always referred to him as a big fat tub of goo. Remember that?
Yeah.
So the bullpen, the dugout in the bullpen had like an opening where we sat behind that, and we got on Terry Forster, kept calling him a big fat tub of goo.
Tony Armas. Like,
even Terry Forster had a limit. He came out. He's like, "Come
on!" Tony Armas. I used to yell, "Tony, Tony!" Start waving his glove. You piece of shit!
Hey, for $2, we got our money's worth. That's for sure. Bleacher seats for $2 back in that day.
Anyways, you got Texas A&M hosting South Carolina. The Gamecocks 4-6. There is no tomorrow here for them if they want to go bowling. They got that win over Georgia, 4-6. The Bulldogs number 4 in the playoff.
Right.
You tell me.
Signature win there.
Yeah, 4-6.
I know. I'm going against I'm going against South Carolina here. I'm telling you that, right?
I'm going to take South Carolina when their backs are to the walls, when they're toughest.
Right,
I have no faith in Jimbo Fisher. He might be the biggest waste of money in coaching I've seen in quite some. He's in that Brett Bielema class.
But Jimbo makes a lot of money. I mean, so I will actually give him the crown because of the money he makes.
Well, we got the big one. Baylor hosts Oklahoma. Of course, once again, the eye test has Oklahoma ranked 9th and Baylor ranked 12th. Forget the Baylor's undefeated, right? That has nothing to do with anything anymore. Like Oklahoma's played this brutal schedule. I'm
gonna take Baylor. I think the audience knows my feelings on Baylor, and if they don't, I will say Baylor is just a disgraceful program, and I'm not holding the current regime accountable. Historically, Baylor's just a filthy program. That being said, they're undefeated. I think Oklahoma. I was high on them early in the season, but right now I'll take Baylor. They're undefeated. I'll take the points.
Yeah, I'm taking Baylor too. I like everything going on here. The money, the line movement, everything going Baylor's favor, and they play in a lot of close games. And against a team with a Civ defense, that's usually something pretty good. Now, I think this is one of the more interesting games on the board. It's Utah against UCLA. The line in this game was 22. Now it's down to 21. Utah's favored. UCLA 4-5 on the season. Utah 8-1.
Listen, UCLA couldn't be any worse last year under Chip Kelly and early in the season. And for whatever reason, the light bulb went off. They're 4-5, playing good, scoring a lot of points. UCLA's not a bad team, and I love Utah. Love Utah. However, I think the points is a lot. I think UCLA is competitive. I think Utah wins, but I'll take UCLA in the points here.
Yeah, I like UCLA too. I got hammered on YouTube for this pick. So if you're on our YouTube channel and you happen to go to this video, maybe you could say, hey, his best bets are at the premium or something. Because, I don't know, man. Those Mormon schools, they just crush me, man. They're just like the meanest, nasty. It's like they don't have anything else to do or something. I don't know, man.
All of a sudden, you don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe they know I saw Book of Mormon twice. I don't know what it is, but it's like.
I got you.
I love Book of Mormon. That's funny stuff. It's like I'm not big on the Broadway plays, but I saw Book of Mormon. I love that one.
Okay.
We got the Ducks taking on Arizona. Oregon minus 27 points, 8-1 on the outside of the playoff, looking in, but in kind of like tucked in, because I understand that they have that one loss to Auburn. There's been the thing in college football used to always be lose early. If you're going to lose early. Now, if you're Alabama or Oklahoma, it doesn't matter. You can lose whenever.
But Oregon couldn't have lost earlier.
Yeah, Oregon, they were winning that game. They were winning against Auburn, and it's like they took. I think what will happen is if Oregon doesn't get in and they finish with one loss, you're going to see teams stop scheduling those games because it doesn't pay. They're going to say it doesn't pay to be in those games.
Right.
I know Alabama has them scheduled way out, but it's like they just play an ACC opponent every year. So this year they drew Duke. But in a few years they draw a little tougher teams, I believe, in that matchup. Might be Clemson to open the season. I know Miami's on there for one of those games too.
Yeah.
Hopefully Manny's recruits are actually panning out by then.
I think they will. I think Manny Diaz is going to be a great coach at Miami. He ain't going anywhere. I mean, he's a Miami native. You know all that. He eats, shits, and breathes Miami Hurricanes. I can see him being a coach for 10 years. So 3 years down the road, he's going to get his boys.
Oh,
Miami's going to be a top 5 program.
You saw in the Florida State-Miami game that he understood it. He understood that game, and he lives it the way that I live it. It's like
exactly.
We might have had some bad losses this year, but whatever. But I win this one, I'm good. I'm good for another year.
Right.
If I would have won that Florida game, I'd be really good for a long time.
But he's good going into the off season with a full year of recruiting. There's no question.
The thing is that you have to remember that Miami had like 4 or 5 of the top recruits in the country.
That bailed.
And when you start thinking about the recruiting battles, and you see who Miami recruits against for those top players from their own backyard, it is Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State. That's who they're recruiting against. Florida, Alabama, Florida State, Ohio State, the biggest of the baddest, teams out there. That's who they recruit against. They win a few of those recruiting battles, it's a different story. I'm telling you, Amari Cooper stays home, this could have been a whole different line for a few of these coaches in the Miami pipeline. They get Amari Cooper to stay home. They get Jerry Jeudy to sign. Jerry Jeudy took a visit. It's not like Miami never had a shot at these guys. Patrick Peterson. It's like he was committed. He was on the commit list. And he decommits. It's getting those guys to stay.
It's the lack of stability at Miami for the last several years. Right. I think Manny Diaz, my point, will be there for 10. He's not going to go anywhere. There's
when
not
you saw the last
job.
year, the
Diaz
decommits last year after Manny took the Temple job, they lost 5, 6 top guys that ended up at Michigan and Alabama. But what you're seeing also in today's college football with the transfer rules is that guys, even though they signed, they were top 150 recruits, and even if they signed with somebody else, if they didn't play their freshman year, they're leaving. And it's, that's a whole nother recruiting game. You have the earlier signing period now, but you also have this easier transfer portal. Before you were locked in, it was like back in the 70s, the NFL, where there was no free agency. It's like you're stuck. You're in jail. A little different story. But speaking of the last game on the board, Cal plus 6.5 against USC. I can't say enough about those USC wide receivers, man. I think you could take them as a group and put them on any NFL team, and they would be fantastic. I mean, I think there's only a few wide receivers in the NFL. There's a bunch, actually, of NFL wide receivers that are as good as these guys. But I'll tell you what. These guys are as good as any of those guys. I think these guys remind me kind of like a DeAndre Hopkins is the type of receiver that they are, where they just climb the ladder and climb the ladder and climb the ladder and climb the ladder. It's like, how does this guy jump this high? How is that even possible? And DeAndre Hopkins, as much as Odell Beckham gets the credit for that catch, that he made, DeAndre Hopkins makes those every third ball that's thrown to him, you know.
So the best for last. I think this is actually the best bet of all of Saturday college football. USC, California. Come on, I'll take the Trojans here.
On the road.
And I'm not talking Charles White. I'm not talking Anthony Davis. I'm not talking Reggie Bush and Pete Carroll type of shit. But USC, I think, absolutely wins by more than a touchdown.
Yeah, I'd lean to USC here. I think Cal's defense is so good, but up against those wide receivers, I don't think they move. But anyways, we went through the whole schedule. We made it. Steve was on a little bit late, but still managed to get it done.
At the day job sometimes get in the way.
We did it in under an hour, which is pretty.
For us, that's pretty good.
So I'm hearing that. So the spread that I have, is the spread that I'm showing is 7 on that Auburn game, but people are saying that it's 2.5 or 3, and that actually sounds right. I'm actually looking at covers. That's where I got that from, and I don't normally mention them because they're a competitor, but since they have the spread off by 4 points, I will mention them. I got it from covers.
Okay.
But let me see what. Let me take.
Still like Georgia.
I still like Auburn. I think Auburn wins the game out.
Okay.
I'm showing it 7. They have this game at 7 everywhere. Let me take a look at it on another site and see what they say.
What we got?
I'm looking. All right, I showed 2.5, 3, and it's the same. It opened at 3, and now it's down to 2.5. I think Auburn wins this thing out.
All right, I like Georgia.
All right, but anyways, recapping. I took Northern Illinois tonight. Steve took Toledo. I took over 50.5 in North Carolina Pitt. Steve took North Carolina. We both took TCU. I took Kansas plus 17.5. Steve took Oklahoma State. We both took Temple. I am on the fence. On Saturday, I might have a different pick. Those Tulane games, some of the weirdest line movements you'll ever see and weirdest point spreads. And normally, those are the someone knows something games. I don't know. Tulane has always been one of those programs. I'm not going to say anything about their basketball scandal that they had and all that other stuff, point shaving. I wouldn't mention Tulane's point shaving scandal from like 25 years ago. I just wouldn't bring it. I wouldn't even bring it up that Tulane had a point shaving scandal.
We're not going to bring up Hot Rod Williams' name.
Yeah, not even going to mention it. Not even going to put Tulane and point shaving in the same sentence.
Not happening.
Not on this show. Anyways, we got Nebraska plus 14.5 for me. Steve took Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin can score 14.5 points.
Yeah, this is a Nebraska with, I am hip.
We got Penn State minus 14.5. We both agree on that. I do not like the way Franklin's taking his foot off the gas, but I think in this game, I think the defense scores some points, and I think that's going to be the difference there. I took Florida. Steve took Florida. We both took Alabama. I took the under in Michigan State. Steve's on Michigan in that one. I took the over in Notre Dame Navy. Steve took Navy.
Take the cover too if you want to throw that.
It's going to be a lot of points.
A lot of points are going to be scored.
That's one of those games where NBC, it's like they don't have anything scheduled on for the next hour after the game.
And at the end of the second quarter, it's 35-31.
Yeah, the game started at 2:30 Eastern. It's like 6 o'clock, And it's like, I guess we're not going to show the rerun of Growing Pains, It's like that we have scheduled.
At that point, right?
It's like, I got this great old episode of Full House that I found. I was going to show it. It's like, not going to make it.
Right.
It's
nice that they would show that before Lori Loughlin goes to jail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's crazy. I saw, what was it on? It was on The Real Housewives of Orange County. One of the housewives was talking about, a college counselor is like $40,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I took the over in Iowa State, Texas. Steve took Iowa State. We both like Kansas State. We both like Kentucky. We both like Virginia Tech in the Battle of Techs. Yep. Auburn, Georgia. We went back and forth on. I I love Auburn in that game.
I love Georgia.
Georgia's played nobody.
I know, but they're
They
playing
played
somebody.
Florida. They played Florida.
They're going to show up,
They
Georgia.
barely covered. It was like they went for 2, they got it, and they covered. And it was like, but outside of that, they lost to South Carolina. South Carolina stinks.
I know they do.
They stink.
They're going to beat Auburn.
Both like Ohio State against Rutgers.
Oh, we love Ohio State.
That's a lot of points.
We love it.
Both
there are no locks.
We both took Duke and Syracuse. I wish they would play the basketball game and just have this game like a 15-minute game at halftime of the basketball game instead. I think it would be more entertaining.
You know what I want to bring up about Duke Syracuse? My brother, we do the sports podcast on Monday, Sports with
Mono and Mono.
That's correct. However, my brother Jim is a graduate of Niagara University. Okay? So there's actually some basketball history there. Hubie Brown, Calvin Murphy.
Viagra University?
Viagra University.
Now it used to be Niagara. Now it's Viagra. They changed.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is because Duke and Syracuse. Greg Paulus, remember Greg Paulus?
Yes.
Point guard for Duke, and he also
quarterback
at Syracuse.
Right.
So I thought I would bring that to the audience attention is Greg Paulus was just announced as the head coach at Viagra University, right? But I mean. Name me another guy that was a starting point guard for Coach K and a quarterback at Syracuse. I don't think I can.
I thought
Greg Paulus.
I'm surprised.
I'm
surprised Andrew Gase hasn't brought him in for a tryout. He seems like one of his guys.
Right?
Really smart player.
Oh God, he got it, boy. He sees things before it happens.
This is a very coachable moment. As long as somebody else is doing the coaching. We both took Washington State. I love Cincinnati this week.
I did
Steve
too.
Took them as well. We both looked like LSU. We both took Oregon. I call them Oregon, kind of like my Louisvilles. Steve likes Arizona State, and I took the other side on that one.
You play to win the game.
We both like Baylor. Steve took Texas A&M. I took South Carolina. As bad as I can badmouth South Carolina, they seem to always back into a bowl game, at least in recent years. And aside from that, I think Jimbo Fisher is dead money at this point. Both like Baylor. I like UCLA. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Kind of like the way Manny Diaz can recruit at Miami. If Chip Kelly can get his guys in at UCLA and to buy into his thing, we've seen what he's done at Oregon. And I honestly believe as much as Nike and all that other stuff is a great recruiting tool at Oregon, if you could get that Southern California talent at UCLA as opposed to going to USC or going to some of these others, or going to Oregon or some of those other schools.
Look out.
Look out. I mean, if they're going to stick with them. I know UCLA has a tradition of really sticking with coaches. We saw Jim Moore Jr. there for a very long time.
Yeah, but you know what? Chip Kelly, where the hell is he going to go? He's already in the NFL, right? Now he's back in college. I could see Chip Kelly at UCLA for 10 years, man.
I could see him there. I think, we see coaches that left for the NFL that have regretted it over time. Lou Holtz was one of those guys. Butch Davis said his biggest regret in life was leaving Miami. And,
Trano's a good example.
Yep, we see it all the time. Nick Saban did it.
Yep.
They come back. And
even Lou Holtz back in the late 70s, he was literally the coach of the New York Jets.
He was,
and he's famous for I got no control over this roster basically.
Yeah,
and he went right back to Arkansas.
That I can't recruit here.
Exactly.
And, this was before free agency, and then we both took USC. Steve says USC is one of his top bets of the entire week against Cal.
Absolutely. No
And
question.
that wraps it all up. But yeah, we got a lot in. We got NFL tomorrow. We got a 14-game schedule, kicking it off with our Thursday night matchup, Browns Steelers. Gotta love a little Baker Mayfield talk. Of course, Jared Goff last week goffed it out again.
Well, I tell you what, if you
Steelers.
listen to Sports with Mono and Mono, I think I'm starting to come off the Jared Goff train here.
I got to listen in because I know Jim is big on Goff. And,
He is, but
I think
you know
my
what? He's
anti-Goff.
starting to scratch his head too and
I think
say, maybe Mitch has something here.
I've turned people before on players and on teams, and I think my anti-Goff and anti-Trubisky rants. I'm telling you, I might not always. This is what I say, and this is the same thing that same problem I have with Craig Trapp, and you can say whatever I want. I called him cocksucker or whatever, right? And, yeah, guilty. I might have done that, and I can be difficult, right? I know it's hard to believe, but I can be difficult.
Okay,
I use the fucking idiot phrase, and I use cocksucker, and these are the mild ones, right?
These are loving words, people.
Right,
These are loving.
It's always that second sentence that gets me. I say the one thing, and then the next sentence, it's always like, listen here, shit for brains. It's like it's that second sentence. You're and then the second sentence, listen here.
Exactly.
It's always I always go over, right? I just have to just but that's what I do, But it doesn't mean I'm wrong, And that's what I think it is. It's like I've been wrong, and when I'm wrong, I admit it when I'm wrong. But it's like just because I don't use the right words, or don't like the players that ESPN likes, or anything like that, doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means that
Means
don't watch the games as much.
If you don't agree with Paul Feinbaum, you're a bad person, right?
And Penn State will play Notre Dame in the national championship game.
Nick Saban didn't look at me in the hallway when I was about to go live.
I grew up in the Beano Cook era, and every single year, and I predict it'll be Penn State and Michigan.
But I miss Beano. I will tell you, different. He was great for college.
He was always really good. And then
passionate about college football.
Towards the end, he did get that Jabba the Hutt look going, but still,
absolutely.
But he never wavered. It was always
and you
Penn
and I will
State,
have the Jabba the Hutt look in
Penn
about 20
State,
years.
Michigan, or Notre Dame. If it wasn't one of those three schools, forget it. And the marquee win was
Notre Dame here all the way up.
and it'd be like, I don't care. They beat Michigan State. It's like Michigan State's 2-6 this year. It's like the big win over Michigan State. It's like any other school from the Midwest. It's like romped over Indiana. It's like
Notre Dame looked great against Ball State. Let me tell you something. Ball State coming into Notre Dame Stadium.
That's the one thing I miss about Lou Holtz is talking about talking about just how big and bad Ball State is, in that matchup.
I gotta tell you, the Ball State team, they play hard. They come in here. I know they haven't won a game in 30 years, but we're not taking them lightly.
One thing about being a Miami fan, our fan base has always had zero tolerance policy for any other team. And it's like we don't have we don't care if they're in our conference. We have a zero tolerance policy. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are. We hate Beano Cook. We hate Herbstreit. Herbstreit's actually had our back. Corso is the one that we really hate. And it's like you don't see much. You don't see. Every year, College Game Day used to go to Miami until someone went up on the stage and punched Lee Corso at the Miami,
right.
And that was the last time it was there. Because Miami was the first. When they used that, they never had as many signs as they have now. But Miami had the sign "Go Canes" or whatever, and someone pulled the sheet off and it said "Fuck you, Corso" right in the middle of the show. But
you must be so proud, Mitch. You must be so proud.
Hey, you know what? I'll tell you what. We are who we are.
I know, the passionate defense. I get it.
It's us against the world every Saturday.
Exactly.
And if it was us with the one loss, we'd be at 14. in this poll system.
Manny
It's us.
Diaz 3 years to go before
Yeah,
we're gonna have
it'd
that.
be like that 2-loss Florida team is way better. It's like you. And like our loss could have been to like the 78 Steelers. Anyways, I'm gonna check out. We got NFL tomorrow. We'll be back. Good show, and congrats again to the Oakland Braves.
Day job, and love talking college football with you, buddy.